Hey everyone, did you know that over 90% of you watching right now haven't hit that subscribe button? If you enjoy our content, take a second to subscribe. It's free and it really helps us keep bringing you great stories every day. It started with silence. Not the kind of silence that brings peace. Not the kind after a long day when you finally get to exhale on the couch with your shoes off and your partner beside you. No, this silence had weight. It had meaning. It had warning. And it came from my wife. Rachel and I had been married for 9 years, long enough to know each other's patterns, long enough to read what wasn't said louder than what was. We'd been through things: injuries, transfers, missed anniversaries, fertility scares. But through it all, I thought we'd status. I'm Detective Tom Halden, 21 years with the department. My badge weighs less than it used to, but my gut has never been sharper. And something in my gut said something was off. It started about 6 months after we brought in the new guy, Evan Rourke. 27, sharp, eager, the kind of guy who still shined his boots every morning, the kind of guy the department loves. And Rachel noticed him too. At first, I thought it was innocent. She asked questions. How's Evan doing? How's the new partner fitting in? Is he single? Innocent stuff, right? He was around our house a few times after shifts, just hanging out. I'd bring him in on Sundays for games, nothing weird. At least, not at first. But then the little things started happening. Evan stopped coming around as much when I was home. Rachel started dressing up on days I was off. Said she was running errands. Her phone? Suddenly it was always on silent. I didn't want to believe it. Not her, not him. But suspicion doesn't go away. It eats. It whispers at you in quiet moments. It waits when you close your eyes. So I did what I do best. I investigated. It started small. I got a second phone. Burn number, no trace to me. I installed a GPS tracker under Rachel's car. Took less than 10 minutes. Thank you, highway patrol training. I slipped a tiny recorder under the passenger seat, and I started logging her stops. She lied the first time, said she was at the market, but the tracker said she stopped for 42 minutes at a hotel off Route 19. I checked the security footage 2 days later. Being a detective has perks. Sure enough, there she was, car pulling in. She walked in alone, and 15 minutes later, Evan showed up. My throat closed when I watched it. They didn't even try to stagger their exits. They came out together, him with that same stupid grin he wears on shift. I felt nothing at first, just cold, like I'd stepped out into the snow in my socks. No rage, just disbelief. And then I went home, and Rachel kissed me like she always did. Said, "You want me to heat up dinner?" Like nothing happened. Like she hadn't spent her afternoon with my partner. I couldn't sleep that night. The next few weeks, I doubled down. Every off shift, every spare minute, I tracked their movements. I upgraded my audio setup. Slipped a voice-activated recorder into Rachel's purse one night while she was asleep. Another under Evan's desk at the precinct. It was dangerous, risky, but worth it. They were smart. No calls, no texts, all in person. But the mics got enough. Whispers, laughs. Her saying, "He's getting suspicious," and Evan chuckling, "Then let's not give him a reason." My partner? My rookie. The guy I covered for more than once. The guy I trained. I started to build files, recordings, logs, pictures. I bought a separate flash drive, labeled it "For When It Ends." But I wasn't rushing. Remember, this wasn't about confrontation. Not yet. This was about control. See, Rachel and I didn't have kids. Not for lack of trying. We had a house that she would never afford on her own. And Evan, fresh into his career, 2 years from tenure, one bad performance review away from being reassigned to traffic duty. I knew where to hit them both. Emotionally, professionally, but I wasn't there yet. I needed more. I needed to make them comfortable, to let them believe they were in the clear. So I played dumb. I smiled more. I came home with flowers. I started calling Evan kid again like I used to. I watched Rachel melt back into normal. She thought I'd moved on. She thought I never suspected, and that made her sloppy. The next time they met at that same hotel, I was already waiting. 2 rooms down. I'd booked it 2 hours early under a fake name. I didn't confront them. Just waited. Audio rolling, camera rolling. When they left, I watched through the peephole. Later that night, I reviewed the footage. The moment they kissed. The way she looked at him, not how she looked at me anymore, not in years. And I sat there, on our bed, while she showered, listening to her hum, as if she wasn't living a double life. I didn't cry, I didn't scream, I planned. They didn't know I'd pulled Evan off a case last month and reassigned it under a different name. A tricky burglary ring, one that was going to fail without solid legwork. I let it fail. Quietly. Filed a report with internal. Didn't name him directly, just laid out the oversight, and recommended review. It's still in the pipeline. Rachel? She mentioned last week she wanted to refinance the house, said we could loosen up a little. I told her I'd think about it. What she didn't know is I'd already frozen some of our joint accounts. Quietly moved parts of my paycheck to a new one. Legal, clean, and unnoticeable. And still I smiled. Still I kissed her goodnight. Still I played the part. Because revenge, real revenge, isn't about heat. It's about precision. About watching the structure collapse piece by piece. About knowing that when it finally comes down, you'll be standing and they'll be buried in the wreckage they built themselves. I wasn't ready to pull the trigger yet. Not emotionally, not strategically, but soon. Very soon. And when it happens, they won't see it coming. Because the last thing they'll expect is the quiet one. The one who was listening the whole time. The hardest part was pretending I still loved them. Both of them. Not in the sense that I didn't still feel something. Of course I did. You don't shut off nearly a decade of marriage like flipping a switch. But the love, whatever was left of it, had been buried under every whisper I heard through that scratchy recorder. Every see you soon that sounded just a little too tender. Every lie that slid past Rachel's lips like it belonged there. And Evan, my rookie, he still smiled at me like we were brothers in arms. Still called me Sarge, even though I wasn't his superior anymore. Still rode in the passenger seat of my unmarked like he didn't spend his evenings with my wife. But I needed him to keep smiling, so I kept playing dumb. There's a trick you learn in undercover work. Let them write the story and you just nod along. People will tell you everything if they think you're not looking for anything. That week, I offered to cover for Evan's late paperwork. Told him I'd sign off on it while he got some rest. He thanked me. Thanked me. What he didn't know was that I'd already rewritten his report on the Whitmore case. Just enough to make it look sloppy. Removed a few witness notes, adjusted the timeline. Nothing major, but enough to catch the eye of internal affairs. They'd been circling the precinct lately. Budget cuts, civilian complaints, a few bad arrests. I knew exactly how to bait them, and Evan's file was now glowing like a signal flare. Meanwhile, Rachel started leaving earlier in the mornings. Said she joined a yoga group downtown. I followed her once, just to be sure, no yoga. Just coffee with Evan in a car lot 2 blocks from a bakery. She wore sunglasses and kept her head down, like that somehow erased the truth. I didn't confront her. Instead, I left a single receipt in her car one night. Coffee shop, 2 lattes. Timestamped the same time she said she was in traffic. I left it half tucked into the passenger side door pocket. Not hidden, not obvious. Just enough for her to notice. Enough for her to wonder. The next morning, I watched her fish it out while pretending to gather her sunglasses. She paused. Read it. Then slid it into her purse and never said a word. Guilt, like rot, is quiet at first. It spreads slowly. It softens people, makes them clumsy. She didn't even realize I'd slipped the second mic under our kitchen table, just beneath the lip of the drawer she never opened. That night, she called Evan after I went to bed. I didn't hear the call, but I heard the message. Tom might know something. And Evan, ever brilliant, responded, "Don't worry. He's not the type. He'll just get over it." Get over it. I replayed that line 3 times. The next day, I brought Evan along on a stakeout. We were watching a warehouse connected to a string of late-night robberies. Boring stuff. Long hours. Nothing moving. The kind of shift where conversations drift into personal territory. I let the silence hang until it was his turn to speak. People always fill silence. It's human nature. And sure enough, Evan said, "Hey, you and Rachel, everything good?" I didn't even look at him, just sipped my coffee. Yeah, why? No reason. You just seem, I don't know, different. Maybe I'm just getting old. He laughed. Come on, you've still got more fight in you than half the guys on the force. I smiled at that. A real one, actually. Because I knew something he didn't. The fight wasn't in my fists anymore, it was in my patience. Over the next 2 weeks, I staged small tests. 1. Rachel's phone. I left mine unlocked on the counter knowing she'd be curious. Left a text open to a contact named Miriam with something vague. Can't talk tonight, she's home. It wasn't real. The number didn't exist, but it didn't have to. I caught her glancing at it, then pretending she didn't. 2 days later, she mentioned Miriam in passing. You have a friend named Miriam from work? Bingo! I shrugged. Used to. Why? No reason. And just like that, a seed of paranoia planted. Now she had something to worry about too. Even the field needed to feel a little uneven for both of them. Evan was next. I let a rumor circulate at the station, subtle, harmless. Just a quiet comment to Officer Dwyer at the coffee machine. Evan's got a bright future, shame if anything. Personal came between him and a promotion. Didn't take long before it echoed back. Evan got quiet around me after that. His questions shorter, his posture tenser. He started checking his phone more during shifts, like he was waiting for something to fall out of the sky. Which it would, eventually. You see, I wasn't just gathering evidence for the sake of catching them. I was building a narrative. One I could control. One where I wasn't the betrayed husband. I was the stable, overworked detective blindsided by a scandal in the ranks. One who kept working while others lost their way. I created a backup folder on my home computer. Named it Inventory Logs 2021. Inside, recordings, location data. A compiled PDF of every time Rachel and Evan were in the same place for more than 20 minutes. Time-stamped, labeled, organized. It was so methodical it scared even me a little, but I wasn't done yet. The final step was subtle. It had to be. I invited Evan over. Rachel hesitated when I brought it up. Evan? She said, drying dishes at the sink. Yeah, we haven't had him over in a while. Thought I'd grill. She nodded too quickly. Sure, yeah, that's fine. The night came. Burgers on the patio. Laughter that felt like someone else's life. Rachel in a sundress, Evan drinking my beer. And me, recording everything on a hidden mic beneath the deck railing. Not because I thought they'd slip, but because people always show their real face when they think you're not looking. Evan toasted to good friends and second chances. Rachel laughed a little too hard. I just watched. They were comfortable. Too comfortable. Which was exactly what I needed. Because when you think the storm's past, that's when the first crack of thunder hits. I excused myself to grab another drink. Left my phone recording on the kitchen counter. Evan followed me in a few minutes later. Hey, he said, listen, if something's off between you and Rachel, I just want you to know. I cut him off. It's not. He hesitated. All right, just saying I got your back. I nodded. I know. But what I really knew was that Evan's back was already exposed, wide open, and the final phase was almost ready. What they didn't understand was this wasn't about catching them anymore. It was about choosing the exact moment when the truth would destroy them the most. And that moment was almost here. The moment you decide to end something, it doesn't feel like fire. It's not rage or a roar or even satisfaction. It's quiet. Like closing a door behind you and knowing you'll never walk back through it again. That's what I felt the morning I put the final plan into motion. No tremor in my hands, no second guessing, just calm. Calculated steps. A detective's instinct doing what it always had. Unraveling a mystery. Only this time, the mystery was my own life. That morning, Rachel kissed me on the cheek before heading out. I watched her walk to her car through the kitchen window, like I always did. She didn't know I'd already removed the GPS tracker. She didn't know the audio recorders were gone. No more trails, no more signs. I didn't need evidence anymore. I had everything I needed. Evan met me at the precinct like it was any other Tuesday. He was dressed sharp. too sharp for a regular shift, hair perfect, shined boots. I almost laughed. He thought he'd pulled it off, that he could betray me and walk away with a smile, a career, and my wife. What he didn't know was that internal affairs had already opened his file. They'd asked for clarification on 3 reports, 2 of which I'd carefully redacted to raise suspicions. Enough to make them hesitate. Enough to make them pull him aside for a routine review. They'd asked for a statement from me the day before. I gave them one. Strictly professional, of course. Rookie needs more time to develop judgment. Sharp, but sometimes too eager. Doesn't always follow procedure when rushed. I didn't lie. I didn't have to. Sometimes telling just part of the truth is more powerful than any lie. Later that morning, Evan was pulled into a meeting. It wasn't disciplinary, not yet. But it was the kind of meeting that gets noted. The kind that floats with you in your file for a while. A speed bump on the track to promotion. Just enough weight to slow him down. He looked at me afterward, confused. Not panicked, but unsure. "Everything all right?" I asked. He nodded. "Yeah, they just had some questions about the Whitmore report." I frowned like I was surprised. "Strange. That one seemed clean." He shrugged. "Guess they're just being thorough." I patted his shoulder. "That's their job." And that was it. One seed. Planted in his career path. It wouldn't explode today or tomorrow, but it would grow. Distrust, doubt, lost opportunities, long term. As for Rachel, that was more delicate. I didn't want to hurt her, not truly. I wanted her to understand what she had done, what she'd thrown away. So I set the stage. That Friday, I told her I had an early shift and left before sunrise. I didn't go to work. Instead, I waited. Parked around the block in a borrowed car. I knew her pattern by now, when she left, where she went, who she met. And right on cue, Evan showed up at the house an hour later. I watched him pull into the driveway I'd paid for, walk into the front door I helped paint, enter the life I had built. I didn't storm in. I didn't call or text. I just waited. 3 hours later, they left in separate cars. I gave it another hour, then I went back in. And Rachel was already home, folding laundry in the living room, humming. I watched her for a moment, not like a husband, like a stranger passing by a window. Then I walked in. "Hey," she said, looking up. "I thought you had the early shift." "I did, got sent home." She nodded, folding another shirt. "Everything okay?" "Yeah, everything's fine." And that was it. I didn't explode. I didn't accuse her. That would have been too easy for her, too freeing. What I wanted was silence, emptiness. The next morning, I left an envelope on the kitchen table. Inside were printed copies of the photos, the GPS logs, the transcriptions of their conversations. Not everything, just enough. Just enough to tell her I knew, and that I had known for a long, long time. I wasn't there when she found it. That was intentional. She needed to sit with it. Without anyone to defend her, without anyone to lie to. Just the truth. Just the paper. Just the weight of what she'd done. I didn't see her until that evening. I came in through the back door as quiet as ever. She was sitting at the kitchen table, the envelope still in front of her. Eyes red, hands still. She didn't look up. She started. I held up my hand. "Don't." A long pause. She whispered, "How long have you known?" "Long enough." I didn't mean to. "Stop." I didn't raise my voice. "Don't rewrite it now. Let it be what it was." Tears filled her eyes, but I didn't move to comfort her. Something between us had been severed. Quietly. Completely. "What happens now?" she asked. I let the question hang. Then I walked over to the drawer, pulled out a manila folder, and placed it on the table beside the envelope. Inside was a proposed separation agreement. Clean. No lawyers. No drama. Just lines on paper. I'd already moved half our joint funds into her name. The house, I could walk away. The silence was worth more than bricks. "I'm not going to ruin you," I said. "This isn't revenge. This is clarity." She looked up at me for the first time. "You could have destroyed us." I shook my head. "You already did." The next day, I turned in a formal request for a new partner. Said I needed a change of pace. Fieldwork had run its course. I requested cold cases, Files no one touched anymore. Cases that required patience, focus, silence, they granted it. I never saw Evan again in person, not officially, but a month later I heard he'd been reassigned. No major scandal, just a shift in resources. It happens, especially when people upstairs aren't quite sure about you. Rachel signed the papers a week after I left. There was no drama, no lawyers, no fight over furniture. We just signed, like we were checking out of a hotel room we'd stayed in too long. And now? Now I live in a smaller place. Quiet, simple, a few pictures in a shoebox, no trackers, no surveillance. I sleep better. Sometimes I wonder if Rachel thinks of me, or if Evan looks over his shoulder when he files his reports, if he second-guesses every compliment from a superior. I hope he does, not out of cruelty, out of memory. Because the truth, the real truth, is that you can betray someone and walk away. You can pretend it didn't happen. Smile, carry on, build a new life. But when the person you betrayed was always 3 steps ahead, you'll never be sure what they saw, what they know, or what they're still holding back. That's the real punishment, not the confrontation, the not knowing. So I left them with silence,